You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christi Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. We are today talking about anger. What do I do with anger?
Anger.
Why?
Yay!
Because we have a new children's book called What Do I Do with Anger that releases July 26th. We hope you get that. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the cover. If you haven't subscribed yet to our YouTube channel, go to Famous at Home. Check it out on YouTube. We'd love for you to check that out. We got the book here in our hands. And
this is Alex.
It is
Alex
a beauty.
struggles with anger. Alex could be me. He could be you. He could be your children, your toddler, your 10-year-old, your 25-year-old. We all struggle with anger, don't we? So this was probably one of the most...
I don't really have an anger issue, but...
No, you actually would be on the lower end of the scale, at least in our family. You handle your anger. You have a very long fuse. Mine is short, tiny. But here's the thing. Anger is probably the one feeling that most parents are intimidated by, hate, want to shut down, will do everything like we're embarrassed about. We have shame around it. When we have it, we have shame around it when our kids have it, especially out in public. But it is just a real feeling. And so this is one book that... You want me to talk closer?
Yeah, just talk a little closer.
One book that we have, What Do I Do with Worry? And we do What Am I Feeling, which is the beginning book of the series. But anger was probably the most requested because it's one of the trickier ones.
And What Do I Do with, or What Am I Feeling is really the start of that. We have a Pull Out Feelings poster in that book that you, in the back, the kids can hang in their bedroom. You can put a refrigerator where they can actually point to what they're feeling. And then we started getting into a little bit more specifically, what do I do with worry, which came out during the height of the pandemic, which was just a great timing for that. And kids hanging out with worry birds and talking about their worry birds and their what ifs. And now we're doing what do I do with anger and talking about their fireballs and pointing them in the right direction. Because in the book, Alex loves soccer. Our kids love soccer. They both play soccer. And Alex is a soccer player in the book. And yet, his teammates won't pass him the ball. And so he gets really frustrated.
Ticked.
Kicks the ball through, I think he's in practice. Yeah, he's in practice. Kicks the ball, hits the, so I wrote the book and I don't remember if he's in practice or game. We're leading up to the game. He's in practice. He kicks the ball, knocks over the water bottles everywhere. The cups of water, splashes the coach. And
Coach Ryan. Which ironically is my brother's name.
Yeah.
Not ironically. And Coach has some really great conversation with Alex about anger. And I think all of us can learn a lot about what Coach Ryan says about anger because, first of all, the tagline, like the phrase, we have a phrase for each of the books, like that is, it rhymes, it's memorable. But for this one, it's anger can show you what's deep in your heart. Naming that feeling can bring a fresh start. It's because, and you probably have heard this before, and maybe not totally understood what it meant, but anger they call a secondary emotion. So it means that there's usually something behind the anger. So we used a soccer game because I thought it was such a great analogy of like the team is the Flames. And so on the front of the jersey is the Flames. On the back is your name. So on the front, what you show out to people is your anger, right? That's what people see. But on the behind, on our backs, the part that only we see, the part that we know, our name, it's personal to us. There's a deeper feeling, and it's usually a much more tender emotion. It's embarrassment, it's sadness, it's fear, it's shame. And so we front with anger, and that's what's intimidating, and that's why we use it, because it feels more powerful than this really tender feeling but that's truly who we are, is on the back of our jersey. And so but anger it is a powerful emotion, and it isn't, and this isn't to get like weird Eastern, we are Bible believing Christians, but anger is an energy emotion. All emotion is energy, but anger especially has a very high frequency of energy, and it has to get out of the body. Because when it's kept inside, and peacemakers, if you're Enneagram people, Enneagram 9s and the like, who hold anger inside, it can turn to depression. It can turn into, it really becomes like a self-hatred because anger isn't released and it's kept inside. And that's not what we want for ourselves nor our children. But we have to let it out in a healthy way. And a lot of children exhibit anger because, and especially boys, in a very physical way, but not, boys are more physical in their expression of emotion. Girls are more verbal, but they can still come out, especially with anger, very physically. And so we talk about a fireball, and Coach Ryan talks to him about what a fireball feels like. So anger is like a fireball that grows inside you, and that does not feel good, does it? But it does feel good when we let it out, and we need to let it out, but we have to do it so in a way that aiming our fireballs in the right direction where no one and nothing gets hurt. And so what does that look like? There's lots of ways that we can teach kids and ourselves
how to do that.
How to release our fireballs in a way that no one and nothing
and
gets hurt.
I think it's very important to, I remember laying in bed one morning just praying through, and you know that point when you're like half asleep, half awake, when you're just in the zone.
That's when the Spirit speaks to you. Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in that state, and I was praying actually about the book, and I remember that phrase coming to mind immediately. And I woke up and I wrote it down, that anger can teach us a lot about our heart.
What's deep in our heart. We had to go over it. We had to edit it a bit.
Naming that feeling can bring a fresh start.
Yeah.
And I think so often for parents, for us, we tend to see anger in our kids, and we automatically, at least if you're raised this way or this is your bend, you see it as disobedience.
Yeah.
And you assume that your child is being disobedient, disrespectful, when the reality is there's something else going on underneath, usually, not all the time, but because there are times that they are disobedient, disrespectful, but most kids aren't acting out for those reasons. They're acting out because something else deeper is going on in their inner world, and getting to the bottom of that. But yet as parents, if we're busy and we're, running from activity to activity, or we've got our own to-do list going on, it's easy to bypass it and not understand what's really going on. And
not take we don't care to. And there's times, FYI, that's okay. There's times when out of expediency, out of just this situation, we can't get to the underlying emotion, but we can circle back.
Well, and I think that's, we have an example that we've given before where, our daughter was at a friend's house with two other girls, and she's probably about 5 at the time. So, I mean, she's young at the time. This isn't like, a teenager, though teenagers deal with this exact same thing. She's like 5 at the time, and all the parents were downstairs. She's playing with her 2 other friends upstairs. And after we got home that day, we call her our sweet girl. She's got such a sweet personality. She was disobedient. She was disrespectful. She was just
defiant, actually.
Defiant.
Yeah.
And it was what is going on? And so we, just as below average humans, we just started disciplining her. Stop talking that way. Knock it off. Why are you doing that? And later you will not speak to me that way. Yeah. You will, if you do that one more time, you are going to, and all the threats and all the, and it didn't change her attitude. She was just the same. It was so unlike her. So later that evening, we have the book, What Am I Feeling? And Christy is tucking her in the bed and pulls the feelings chart out and said, honey, what are you feeling? What is going on? Today was just an abnormal day for you. It was not normal. It was you were out of sorts. What are you feeling? And our daughter pointed to anger. And then Christy asked her, is there anything else going on that you're experiencing or that you're feeling? And her little finger went to embarrassed. And I remember you telling me the story.
And then it went to sad.
And then it went to sad. And I remember you talking about this to her and asking her.
And that's when she broke. Happen? And that's when all the tears came. And that's usually what's true. Is behind the anger, there's something that's so tender and vulnerable, but if you can get there, it all falls. And then you have the real, I saw her heart. I had her, and I knew looking at, I was like, that, there you are again.
Yeah.
And she's explained that, these girls basically told her that they wanted to play alone without her. And so they went in the bedroom and shut the door, and she was left out in the hallway by herself.
Right there's the anger can tell you what's deep in your heart. Naming that feeling can bring a fresh start. But we have to be able to enter into our children's world and get to that. What is going on behind the anger? We do this with married couples a lot with an anger chair, where you have the angry feeling. You put two chairs back to back, and the anger's driving the bus. The anger's driving in the driver's seat. And when you do this with your spouse, when you literally get up out of that chair and walk to the back chair and sit in the back chair and go, okay, what's really going on? That physical getting up and walking to that back chair in and of itself can make you break. And because you're realizing the anger. And so often in marriage, I know we're talking about kids, but in marriage, this plays itself out as well. This is why this children's book is actually for us as parents. What ends up happening is we attack our spouse because they're the safest person in our lives. But what that does then is it in turn triggers defensiveness in our spouse. And then it creates an argument. And when we can really get underneath and go, I was embarrassed, I felt rejected, I felt jealous, I felt, disappointed. That is getting to the root of what's really going on, and then maybe even some deeper fears that we might have about the particular situation.
And you see how, again, because anger is such a powerfully protective emotion, it feels more comfortable to a lot of us to be in that front chair and to live like that's real, and to totally negate, ignore. We don't want to know what's back there because it's so tender. And yet that's the only way we can actually connect with a person, is to connect to the heart of the true person. Anger isn't the person. Anger is how they're protecting themselves. So put that lens on your spouse, put that lens on your children. When they are angry, it's because they usually feel small in some way, vulnerable in some way. It could be frustration with a child, think of a toddler that throws a temper tantrum because they can't get, the marble to go down the chute the way they want it. They can't do something. And so they feel so limited, so small, so inept. It's like proving to them like they don't have what it takes. That's what the anger is covering up. If you think about it, when your kids come home, like Kennedy did, from a social situation, anger that, comes home from school and a kid's just like, something triggered a part of them that day that made them feel really small, really vulnerable, scared. Like usually there's a lot of fear involved, and anger just protects that scared small part of us. And so if we can go into it with that lens, parenting, marriage, friendship, whatever, it changes the way we handle it, because a lot of times anger triggers anger, because anger is so threatening. The person on the receiving end of anger, think about how you feel when someone comes at you, like attacks you. I don't mean physically. Maybe that happens still. I don't know.
It happens.
Everyone attacks you like verbally, even let's go to the internets, puts a nasty comment. That thing you first will feel probably just like a shot to the gut, like this, that's a horrible feeling where you just feel so attacked, so threatened. And then the anger comes out, right? It's like this fireball that builds inside of you, and you just want to shoot it back. And this is where nothing productive happens, because anger that confronts anger is actually addressing nothing, because there's not dealing with human hearts.
You're not dealing with your true self. You're protecting your imposter in that moment, and trying to cover through your imposter what feels vulnerable, because you don't feel safe anymore, and you feel like you've got to protect some image, or you've got to, in order to feel loved, in order to feel accepted, in order to feel invited and wanted. And that's what our kids are experiencing from a very early age. And so if we can begin to get them to understand, to put language to their emotion, what it does is it's so powerful, because, in Proverbs it says, Patience is better than power. Patience is better than power, and controlling one's emotions than capturing a city. And that's in Proverbs 16. And that's the CSB version. I love that because it says that controlling one's emotions, you can capture a city, but if you can't control your emotions, you're going to end up losing the city because the idea is that if you're either acting on your emotions without even thinking about it, you're going to lose the city because they control you. They're driving every decision you make. The opposite of that is also true. If you're suppressing or repressing or denying your emotions, what ends up happening is they are controlling you because you're not feeling them. So in other words, if you've ever tried to not cry in a movie theater or at some point where you're fighting back tears, those emotions have more control of you than you have of them. And so your inability to label those emotions are going to catch up to you at some point because your body is, there's a great book out there called The Body Keeps the Score. Your body is actually keeping the score. It's such a great title because, as Christy was saying earlier, like you've got to be able to get that anger out. You've got to be able to find a way to release it. But one of the most powerful ways of releasing it is identifying it. It's identifying the underlying emotion behind it. It's identifying where it came from, why it's there. Because if we can help our kids understand that from an early age, their self-awareness, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. It begins by self-awareness. The more self-aware you are of your emotions from an early age, the better able you are to read a room when you walk into it, to understand social situations, to understand social cues, and to really walk into a room and be motivated by in a relationship in a way that you get out of that relationship in a mutually beneficial way. The other person's getting out of that relationship in a mutually beneficial way, what you both desire for it.
Yeah.
And that is something that is very rare. I believe it's very rare. It's very rare in politicians today and leaders and all over the place. It's very rare, but it's one of the most incredible tools that you can have to live a successful, joyful life. And if we can cultivate that from an early age in kids, to me, that's everything.
It's so powerful. And I think the first step is telling kids that their anger is okay. There's so much shame around anger because we carry shame about our own anger. How many times, how many conversations do we have with parents that are just so ashamed of how their anger takes over, how they treat their kids, how they lash out at their spouse, how they lash out at their kids. We hate it. And because we hate it in us, we hate it in our kids. And so we put that on them as if you will not act like that. You will not. It's just anger. It's just a feeling. And so that's I think that's step one in teaching kids and reteaching ourselves about anger, is that it is okay to have. It's just a feeling, but we can't let it control us, and we can learn how to control it when we address it. And then it's step 2, what's the feeling behind it? Step 3 is how do we aim our fireballs in the right direction where no one and nothing gets hurt? There are really helpful ways, and a lot of those ways not only get the energy out of the body, but what you'll see is we talk about the nervous system. When you are angry, your nervous system is in fight or flight, right? Which is in the amygdala back here at the base of the brainstem. It is the caveman part of the brain. When you're living in that state, which, to be honest, if you look around at our culture, a lot of people are stuck there. They are in fight, flight, or freeze. Where frozen would mean the form of depression, inability to move. You can't trust yourself. You don't know how to can't make decisions. Fight is obviously the aggressive part of anger, where they are coming out at other people. They're fighting for themselves. They feel like they're just it's their nervous system protecting them to try to just stay alive in a survival mode. And then flight is avoidance, getting out of there, fleeing. So everything that is fearful is this recoil and get out mode, which means you can't stay in relationships. You can't be connected to people. If you're living in this, and a lot of us are, there was a season of my life where I talk about it in other episodes. I could go there all again, but we're at the bottom rung of life when I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and I was in the worst season I have ever been in. But my nervous system was so overwhelmed, it was trying to keep me alive. But if you stay there and you don't let it out, what it's doing is that's in that self-protection is basically telling you that everything is a threat. And if we can teach our kids to calm the nervous system, it's probably one of the most powerful things. In my Kids EQ, this Kids EQ Academy that we're building and they've piloted here, the ways that we can ground the body, and you might have heard of grounding techniques, like where, bare feet in the grass, and that's beautiful. That's one way, but grounding is so much more than that. It is bringing the nervous system back to calm, because when we're calm, we can connect. So in a calm state where we're being run by the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to make good decisions, allows us to be in relationship, to be confident, calm, and connected to other people, which is what we really want for our kids. We want to bring that online. The trouble is we have to give them the tools to move from fight or flight into calm and connected. So how do we do that? In the book, that's where we talk about sometimes it begins by getting the energy, that anger energy out of your body. So Coach Ryan tells him, because he even goes to talk to him about it, right? And when you're in fight or flight, you can't talk, you can't reason, you can't think straight. You have to get that energy out. And so he tells him, I want you to run down the field, buddy, and I want you to shoot a goal, kick a goal. I wasn't a soccer player, can you tell? We use soccer.
Kick the ball into the net.
Just kick the ball, put it in the net. And then he comes back and he's like, do it again. But he says it very calm. He is not elevating his anger to Alex's anger. And that is the work as a parent. That is what is so hard to do, is to not elevate.
And we talked about that in the last episode where we war for certain things.
Yeah.
You have to war for that. If your natural tendency is to elevate when your kids are elevated, that is...
If you're watching YouTube, you see my hand is in there.
You are to be...
Self-proclaimed, yes.
As the bigger, stronger, wiser, kind humans, like as the adults, we don't want to raise our...
we don't want to, but it's hard. It's hard not to, but that's...
Because all it does is it increases everybody else. And one way, by the way, to kind of do this in a very practical way, and by the way, in the book, in the children's book, we have in the back practical ways. We have a parent connection in the back of the book and practical ways.
Will this come out before the book?
To do that.
Will this episode?
I actually don't even know. I don't know. It's coming out pretty closely. If you can pre-order this book, if this comes out before July 26th, there's a poster that you can get and hang in your kid's bedroom. If
that gives you those practical ways. Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes here so you can get that. If not, you can also, in the back of the book, there's all those ways that you can help your kids calm their anger. But my whole point there was, hold on, wait. My point was, I had a point and... Now I lost it.
R.I.P.
Calming our kids' brains.
R.I.P.
Oh, this is what I used to do.
Thought.
This is what I used to do. It's not resting in peace. It is prospering. It is prospering right now. That thought was...
Did you find it?
Yeah. Oh, as parents, we may not have any clue what to do in the moment because our kids are just so in their fight, flight, and freeze mode. They are so overwhelmed. You don't even know what to do with them. And I remember coming home last weekend from speaking at an event, and I remember you telling me how proud you were of you for... I love when you tell me you're proud of you.
Do you know how good that is, by the way?
You were proud of you.
Do you know how healthy that is?
For the way that, okay, let's not go down another rabbit trail. Hold on a second. You can go that later.
Okay, we'll go there.
You were so proud of you for helping Micah, our 2-year-old, when he was so overwhelmed.
I did well.
And one of the ways that you can do this, if you don't have any idea what to do in the moment, and you normally escalate in those situations, is just simply, if you can, sometimes you can't, is hold your child. There's a physical effect. Even Christy talks about this when I hold her hand. There's a sigh. There's like a calming in the body when you hold one another, or you just hold your child's hand, hug them, embrace them. But you don't even need to say anything.
In fact, don't, because
just
they can't hear you.
Because they're not going to listen. It's going to go in one ear, not the other. Just relax, just hold, because it's not until then that you're going to be able to get anywhere anyway from a verbal communication standpoint.
Yeah.
So just get everybody calm rather than ratcheting everybody up.
But what you're doing, again, fight, flight, freeze. It's because, again, your body is, everything is, it's a threat. they're seeing it as a threat, and you have to give your kids and yourself tools to get back to safety. That's why holding a hand is so powerful. It is safe. It is telling the body, it is telling the nervous system, you are safe. You're angry, right? But you're safe. And all of those things are the things that bring us back to a place of safety. And if we can do that and give our kids these tools now in life, can you imagine how you don't want,
I just want you to be able to talk into that.
I feel like I have to lean forward so much.
Okay, we'll fix that.
Okay. But it's safety. So often the ways we were parented, the way we were taught, it was disobedience, it was defiance, it was rebellion. And so we punish the anger. And can you see why that anger is not going to go away when it's punished? Because we come down even harder on the child, which tells the child, like, terrified, which just keeps them in fight, flight, or freeze. It is not condoning the behavior. It is telling the child that they are safe. It's telling our spouse that they are safe. So you can get to what's behind it. So you can connect with their heart again. And then once their prefrontal cortex is back online, we can talk to them and give them tools and then discipline them for the behavior so that they understand what they've done. And the next time will be more likely to look for safety and not lash out.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember too, in Ephesians it says, in your anger, do not sin. Yeah. So Bible doesn't say not to be angry. The Bible says don't sin in our anger. So that's a key point. But the other
which is taking the shame away from anger.
The other
like
key,
we talked about.
Yeah, and not being afraid of it.
Yeah.
The other key point, because you're angry because a boundary has been broken in your life, somebody wasn't safe. There's certain things that we learn from anger. We have to learn. But the only way to learn and for your kids to learn is for you to be able to enter into their world to help them learn it, and to have someone enter into your world to help you learn it. And this is why we talk about this so much in terms of our own growth and our own emotional maturity. But we use James 1:19 and 20 in the book as a real core two verses that I think are the most sanctifying verses in all of Scripture. My dear brothers and sisters, it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. And I think we often we say, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, but we miss because because human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Human anger, lashing out. I mean, just look at Twitter, look at social media. It's mind-boggling to me, the nonsense that's getting pushed out there in anger, but nobody listens to anybody. And so you might vent, but you're looking like a fool in your venting because you're venting to a place that is everyone else is venting as well. And so to help our kids understand how to...
It just speaks to how much people need this book, honestly.
Go get it. What do I do with anger?
Put it on the Twitter.
But I would put it on the Twitter. I would say this, for us as parents to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry.
Yeah.
When your child is angry, for you to be quick to listen, if that means you hold your child, if that means you wait a few minutes before you're going to engage your child, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That flies in the face of most parenting techniques that are all about ratcheting up anger, spanking in the middle of anger, whatever it is that we do or that we think is important to do. It doesn't work. And all it does is ratchet up everybody else. And the goal then is to calm everybody's brain so that we actually engage in two-way communication and help our kids understand what's really going on in their inner world, because that's what's going to cultivate healthy relationships in the long run and also build their brain.
Yeah.
Their relational brain.
I feel it's important to say this. It's not that you don't know this, but I feel like you need someone to tell you, you are going to mess this up 1,000 times more. Reading a book or even understanding the concepts is not going to change your behavior, but it's a practice and you will get better at it. But we have to do the work first. We cannot expect our kids to handle their anger when we cannot handle ours. They learn from us. We model for them this more than we teach them this. So we can give them the sweet little phrases and we can give them the posters and we can read them the books, and that is all helpful. but we have to do the work to do it ourselves with the compassion and grace for ourselves that we will mess this up so many more times.
Will. And I think it's important that you said that. I appreciate you saying that. There's research that shows, John Gottman has done the research on this, that if we just get this thing right 2 out of 5 times, excuse me, just 2 out of 5 times. If we just get this right 2 out of 5 times, we can still get the outcomes we desire in our kids because of a word called repair. And the research says it is the ultimate of relationships. The Bible calls it forgiveness, and it tells us to practice it a lot. And so when you mess up, because you will, you're not going to always get it right, our ability to enter into our child's world and to apologize for our specific offense and ask how we can make it right, what that does is it teaches our children that we're not perfect. We don't expect them to be perfect, and we're modeling for them how to make it right. And so give yourself compassion and grace, give your kids compassion and grace as you navigate this, because it will pay dividends for you down the road as you navigate emotion in your home.
And when you get it right, you can tell your spouse, someone who cares. Maybe it's a friend.
Oh yeah, you were proud of you.
You can be proud of you.
Yeah.
We'll talk
And
about
I was
that another
proud of
episode. You can be really proud of you, and you need to know and say it out loud that you're really proud of you. Celebrate the wins, because otherwise you're only going to soak in your defeats. Celebrate your wins and celebrate your kids' wins. Until next time.
Until next week. Keep in mind that the greatest red carpet you will ever walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home. We love you.